Okay, here's what.
Please,
we can cut it down.
Okay,
It's been a very weird time to be. I would say a progressive Jewish person in the world. It's been a very hard time with the conflation of like state ideologies with your religion that in my view are very different things.
So that right there is an excerpt of an interview with actor Ethan Slater, who you might know from the new Wicked movies. I just finished watching it last night. And it's SpongeBob SquarePants on Broadway. And he's on the Gianmarco Ceresi's The Downside podcast, talking about something that obviously, and you can sort of hear it in his voice, is a difficult thing to talk about, which is that right now he is Jewish, but he is progressive. He doesn't necessarily agree with some of the propaganda that we see floating around. And we'll get more into that interview, more of the video, but Cenk, what do you make of this?
Yeah, I love this development, and I'm gonna halfway suggest something for Jewish Americans that is said to Muslim Americans all the time. And I'm curious what you think about that. So we'll get to that right after you tell us all the facts.
Yeah, so you saw in the video, he's referring to himself as a progressive Jew in that. He's been outspoken in condemning Israel for what they've done in Gaza. In fact, way back in December of 2023, he signed a letter written by the Charles E. Smith Jewish Day School alumni openly condemning Israel and asking for a ceasefire. You can see the actual post of that right here. And just in case Scott Jennings is watching, the first sentence is indicting Hamas for what they did. So you could spare us yet again calling for people to always condemn Hamas. He did, don't worry. He just also pointed out what Israel is doing right there. The bottom is cropped, I can give you the actual text from that. He says, my Jewish education taught me that the world must never again stand by as violence and tragedy unfolds. As this letter articulates so well, we must extend that to communities beyond our own, beyond the Jewish people. And right now the Palestinians are under immediate threat from the state of Israel. My Jewish education also, by design, gave me a one-sided view of Israel and its need for self-defense and safety. But it is impossible for me to understand how Israel's treatment, occupation, and current bombardment of Palestinians makes Jews anywhere any safer. That is why I signed this letter, and that is why I support calls for a ceasefire. If you, like me, were raised within the Jewish community, please read this letter with open eyes and an open heart. And we can go to a little bit more of the appearance on that podcast where you can see what Ethan Slater has to say.
It's been a very hard time with the conflation of like state ideologies with your religion that in my view are very different things, but they become conflated in every way, and I think that that's really disastrous. And so there have been a lot of different kinds of tragedies that have been happening, right? Like having this shooting in Sydney, Australia, and at the same time, not at the same time, but over the past years, the like horrible atrocities being committed so often in our name. So to have all of these things happening at once has been a really crazy thing, and it becomes hard. We talked a little bit about being Jewish, but it's hard to figure out how to go forward. And this year, I think sort of the small communities and connecting with family and loved ones has been a really helpful path for me to figure out what it means to be Jewish, and also politically aware in the world.
And I'm glad that he's talking about it because I'm not Jewish, but I imagine it is probably very difficult to hold anything even approaching the positions that he has or the advocacy that he's done. The amount of attacks that you must get. I can only imagine the DMs that he has gotten and the threats against him and all that. I've heard similar things from other people in a similar situation as his. Jake, you said you had a theory.
Yeah, look, one thing at a time. First of all, I love the Ethan Slaters of the world, and there's tons of them. I just interviewed Jill Stein 2 days ago, and she's at every Gaza protest, etc., saying, and she explained to me in the interview, like when we got taught never again, I believed it, and so this is the time to say never again. So did you mean it or didn't you mean it? So you know the long list: Dave Smith, Glenn Greenwald, Robert Greenwald, Ben Cohen. We could list literally millions of people who are Jewish who are against what's happening in Gaza and what the abuse of the current Israeli government, and most of the younger Jewish Americans. And so that leads to, and I understand this because we have similar dynamics in immigrant communities between the older crowd and the younger crowd, right? Older immigrants are more, if I'm just being blunt, loyal to their original home country, right? And in this case, it's a little bit different because a lot of Jewish Americans weren't Israelis, but they were taught Israel is the end all be all. If Israel does not, it could go away at any moment. It could not survive, and if that happens, we're all going to die. Israel is our only protection. Israel is the greatest thing on earth, and you cannot move them from that position. A lot of older Turkish Americans that I know, you cannot move them on the Armenian genocide, on the Kurds, on anything. Because for them, the morality is not about truth or justice. Morality is about supporting your own tribe. So now that's clashing with whether it's younger Turkish Americans or younger Jewish Americans with their elders, and they're going, no, these are universal principles. And by the way, these are the principles of Judaism. Judaism is about fighting for the underdog, challenging authority, making sure that these kind of atrocities never happen. So sorry, mom and dad, but I think you've got Judaism wrong, right? And then what's doubly bothering people like Ethan Slater, and I'm not putting words in his mouth because you just heard him say it, is the conflation. They're like, but now you guys are all going around the Israel First crowd, the conservative Jewish Americans that support Israel, etc., and saying, if you criticize Israel, that means you're a Jew hater. But then you're saying that all Jews love what Israel's doing, but we don't love what Israel's doing. We don't want that genocide, and you're putting it on me by saying it's a Jewish thing. Don't do that. That's not fair. That's not accurate. And by the way, you're not just hurting me, you're hurting the religion by saying now the religion is pro-genocide. And if you're not pro-genocide, you're not a real Jew. Oh, that's a terrible thing to say. Like if an anti-Semitic person said it, you'd be against it. But now it's Israel First crowd saying it, right? Yeah. And so now finally the standard that I was alluding to, John. Now every time, and this happens a little less these days, but certainly after 9/11 for like 2 decades, right? It was anytime a Muslim does anything wrong in the world, a bombing, an attack, or anything, right? Every Muslim had to come out and say, we're so sorry, it's not us, they're wrong, blah, blah, blah. And you have to march, and if you don't say it, that means you love Muslim terrorism or whatever, right? So now that was a totally unfair standard. They had nothing to do with it. What are you even asking them for? But now, in this case, now I don't think we should do it to Jewish Americans either, right? But I'm a little conflicted about it because if you're a Jewish American, it is a little bit of your responsibility in this, because this is a different thing. Because no one said that the radical Muslims or the terrorist Muslims represented all Muslims other than the people in power, like the
Dick Cheney,
and Netanyahu. Right? So, but the Israelis, the Israeli government, Israel First in America are all saying Jewish people love what Israel is doing in Gaza. So it's a little bit like if I would want to fight back, if I was Ethan Slater, and he is fighting back in his own way, and everybody fights back in their own way. So Ethan is saying what I think a lot of Jewish Americans should be saying, which is, no, that doesn't represent me. That doesn't represent Judaism. And stop conflating the two things. You're not helping us, you're hurting us. So that it's not a responsibility of you because you're Jewish and hence you're responsible for what Israel's doing. No, it's the opposite. It's what you're doing is you're standing up for Judaism. The better angels there and the better view, and I think the more accurate view of Judaism. And you're trying to protect your religion by not letting the Netanyahu's, Ben Gvir's, Smotrich's, Mark Levin's, Ben Shapiro's of the world smear it by claiming that it represents murder, slaughter, occupation, and genocide. I wouldn't want my religion represented by that in any way, shape, or form. Not that I have any left, but yeah.
I'll leave that to them. I will just say, and he alluded to it with the state ideologies thing. To me, it's almost like a core principle. It is never acceptable to have a situation where you are being told you cannot criticize what politicians are doing. Because if you are, you're not engaging in politics or rhetoric, it's something else. it's anti-Semitic or whatever. And I remember in the wake of 9/11 and the launch of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, we had something like that. You could not criticize the war effort, or you were being you had a different ideology, we're having a debate, marketplace of free ideas, you were being anti-American. Now, you'll notice, of course, as soon as George W. Bush was not in charge anymore, the Republicans certainly felt comfortable criticizing Barack Obama's foreign policy. But for a while, you supported the troops, or you shut the hell up, or maybe lost your jobs, or lost your position on cable news. And I'm sure there's other examples you can come up with where that sort of weird protective field around a political party existed. And whether it's in the United States or it's in Israel, it should be unacceptable.
Yeah, and I want to be clear. I'm not saying every Jewish person has to come out and tell us which side are you on. I would never want to do that to anybody. I'm saying if you're on the side of peace and you're on the side of not conflating Judaism with what the Israeli government is doing, I think it would be better for you and for all of us if you spoke out more often, like Ethan is, and Jill Stein is, and Ben Cohen is, and all of those people who are doing a wonderful job, I think, of being progressives, being, it's not for me to decide, but let's put it this way, representing their religious background in a positive way, much better than anyone in Israel first. And thank God that there are those progressive Jews that are fighting back, because in a big way, they're protecting Judaism and Jewish people overall, because it gets harder for the bad guys to smear all Jews.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Right?
Yeah.
Because it's just not true. It's definitely not anywhere close to all Jews. No group, no individuals within any larger group, race, religion, ethnicity, all agree. That's not a thing that happens. So let's all be rational. And thank you, Ethan Slater, that was awesome.
Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.